The morning was quiet at the small-town police station. The sound of ringing phones and the shuffle of papers filled the air. Officer Jake Miller sat at his desk, sipping his coffee and scrolling through reports. His face showed no emotion, but everyone in the station knew his reputation. Jake had been in the force for 12 years, and though he was skilled, his attitude toward certain people was no secret. He looked up when the door opened. A woman in a sharp black suit stepped in. Her presence instantly caught everyone's attention. She was confident, calm, and carried herself with power. Her skin tone stood out in the room full of mostly white officers. She smiled slightly, scanning the faces around her. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Angela Roberts, the new head of internal affairs." The room went silent. Even the sound of typing stopped. Jake's smirk faded. No one had expected this. The new internal affairs head, the person responsible for investigating misconduct, was a black woman. Angela walked toward the chief's office, her heels clicking on the tiled floor. Jake leaned toward his colleague, whispering, "Internal affairs. A woman like her? This'll be interesting." His friend gave a nervous laugh, but Angela heard him. She didn't react. Not yet. That day, she spent hours reviewing old case files, checking reports, and observing the officer's behavior. Her eyes were sharp, scanning every page, every detail. She had worked in big cities before, and she'd seen corruption in many forms. But this town had a different kind of problem. Quiet racism, hidden behind smiles and uniforms. Later that afternoon, Angela walked into the briefing room. All officers gathered, curious about the new leader. She introduced herself again, this time with authority in her tone. "I'm not here to judge anyone," she said. "I'm here to make sure justice means the same thing for everyone, no matter who they are." Some nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Jake crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. After the meeting, Jake followed her outside. "You really think you can change this place?" he asked with a grin. Angela met his eyes. "Change doesn't ask for permission," she said calmly. Jake laughed and walked away, shaking his head. But deep down, something about her confidence bothered him. That night, Angela stayed late at the station. The halls were empty, the lights dim. She opened one of Jake's old reports, a case that had been quietly closed years ago. A black teenager had been arrested for resisting authority. The report was short, but something felt wrong. The timeline didn't match, and there were no body cam recordings. Angela's eyes narrowed. She flipped through more files and found a pattern. Several complaints, all involving the same officer, Jake Miller. A chill ran through her. This wasn't just one mistake. This was a trail, one that had been ignored. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, heart racing. Jake stood there, holding his coffee, pretending to be casual. "Burning the midnight oil, huh?" he said. Angela closed the file slowly. "Just catching up," she replied. Jake leaned closer. "Careful, Roberts. You dig too deep around here, you might find things that don't want to be found." Angela smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I'm hoping for." He walked out, leaving her in silence. But his words echoed in her mind, a warning, or maybe a threat. As the clock hit midnight, Angela looked again at the file in her hands. The more she read, the clearer it became. The same names, the same pattern of abuse, the same officer. She whispered to herself, "You've been hiding for years, Officer Miller." But not anymore. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was just beginning, both in the sky. And inside the police station, Angela saved the files to a separate drive and locked them away. Tomorrow, she would start asking questions. And Jake Miller had no idea that his greatest enemy wasn't outside the force, but had just walked through the front door. The next morning, the police station buzzed with activity. Angela arrived early, wearing a calm expression that hid the storm brewing inside her. In her bag, she carried a flash drive containing copies of Jake Miller's old reports. Evidence that could change everything if used at the right time. As she walked past the rows of desks, she noticed the sudden hush that followed her. Conversation stopped. Coffee cups froze midair. She had become the silent topic of every whisper. Jake, sitting at his desk, looked up and smirked. "Morning, boss," he said in a mocking tone. Angela gave a polite nod. "Morning, Officer Miller." Her voice was calm, almost too calm. She could sense his confidence, the kind that came from years of getting away with things. But Angela had faced worse. She had seen men like Jake before, men who hid their prejudice behind badges and paperwork. Later that day, Angela invited Sergeant Lewis, an older officer with a kind face, into her office. She had noticed he often looked uncomfortable around Jake. "Tell me about Officer Miller," she said softly. Lewis hesitated, glancing at the door. "Jake's been here a long time. Gets the job done, but..." He stopped mid-sentence. "But," she pressed, "he's got a temper, especially with people who don't look like him." Angela leaned forward. "Has he ever been reported for misconduct?" Lewis sighed. "Plenty of times, but complaints just vanish. Evidence disappears. Every time someone tries to speak up, the file goes missing, or the witness changes their story." Angela nodded slowly. "Thank you, Sergeant. That's all for now." When he left, she sat back in her chair, thinking, missing evidence. Changed stories. It all fit too perfectly. Someone inside the system was protecting Jake, or maybe Jake was protecting someone else. That evening, Angela decided to test something. She walked into the evidence room, pretending to do a random inspection. Officer Ryan, the records clerk, looked nervous as she entered. "Just a routine check," she said casually. "I'd like to see case number 4928. Ryan froze. That's old. Might be archived." Angela smiled faintly. "Let's see it anyway." After a few minutes of searching, Ryan handed her a dusty folder. But when she opened it, the pages were blank. "Blank?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Must have been damaged?" "I'll check the backup later." Angela closed the folder slowly. "Do that," she said, watching his eyes shift nervously. When she left, she heard him whisper into his phone. "She's asking about 4928. Now she was sure. Someone didn't want her digging deeper. Back in her office, Angela opened her laptop and searched the digital database. She typed in the same case number. A name appeared. Marcus Brown, age 17. Her heart sank. The same boy from Jake's report? The one accused of resisting authority? The system said he was now deceased, shot in a gang conflict 2 years after his arrest. Angela stared at the screen. Something inside her tightened. She knew this wasn't random. She picked up the phone and called the city morgue. "This is Angela Roberts, Internal Affairs," she said. "I need the file on Marcus Brown. Cause of death, autopsy, everything." The man on the other end paused. "That file was sealed, ma'am." "By police order?" Her jaw clenched. "By whose order?" "Officer Miller." Angela ended the call and leaned back, her mind racing. A dead teenager sealed reports, and a racist officer with too much freedom. It was no longer just about corruption, it was about justice denied. At night, she drove through the quiet streets of the town. She stopped near an old, broken-down house, Marcus Brown's last known address. An elderly woman sat on the porch. Angela introduced herself gently. "I'm sorry to disturb you, ma'am. I'm investigating what happened to your grandson." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "They said he was a criminal," she whispered. "But he was a good boy. That officer, he ruined his life." Angela felt a chill. "Jake Miller." The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, that's his name. He told everyone Marcus attacked him, but my boy never even fought back." Angela promised to return. As she drove away, thunder rumbled again, just like the night before. In the dark, one truth echoed in her mind. This was no accident. Marcus Brown's death was the key, and Jake Miller was hiding something big. Angela knew she was walking into danger, but she wasn't afraid, because this time, the shadows behind the badge were about to face the light. The next morning, the sky was gray, and the air carried the smell of rain. Angela arrived early again, her face calm, but her mind sharp. She had barely slept. The story of Marcus Brown kept playing in her head. A young life lost. Hidden behind official lies. She knew now that Jake Miller wasn't just a problem. He was the reason this town had lost its trust in justice. But to expose him, she needed more than suspicion. She needed proof. Angela opened her laptop and began typing a confidential memo. It was a fake investigation order, mentioning that internal affairs would soon reopen case #4928. She didn't plan to send it to headquarters. She planned to leak it inside the station. If Jake really had something to hide, he would react. By noon, the fake memo had quietly accidentally been left on the printer tray in the main office. Within an hour, it had already spread through whispers. Angela stayed in her office, pretending to be busy, but her eyes watched every movement through the glass wall. Jake entered the room, grabbed the printed page and read it carefully. His jaw tightened. Then, with forced calm, he crumpled it and tossed it into the trash. But Angela noticed something. Before he threw it away, he took out his phone and typed a quick message. His fingers moved fast, like someone in panic. Her trap had worked. That evening, Angela checked the security footage. She zoomed in on Jake's desk area and saw him sending the text. The screen wasn't clear, but she caught part of the contact name, SL. She frowned. Who was SL? A friend? A superior? Or someone else inside the system? The next day, she asked Officer Ryan, the nervous records clerk, to join her. Ryan, she said gently, you've been here a long time. Tell me, do you know anyone with the initials SL? Ryan hesitated, eyes darting around. Maybe Lieutenant Scott Lewis. He's in the neighboring precinct. Used to work here years ago. Angela's eyes lit up. Used to? Yeah, Ryan said quietly. He left after that Marcus Brown mess. Said he was tired of small-town politics. Angela nodded slowly. Thank you, Ryan, that's helpful. But something told her Lieutenant Lewis hadn't really left the story that night.
Oh.
Angela drove to the next town and found the old precinct. She walked in, introduced herself, and asked to see Lieutenant Scott Lewis. He was older now, with gray hair and tired eyes. When he saw her badge, he stiffened. Internal affairs? What do you want from me? Angela sat across from him. I'm looking into an old case, Marcus Brown. You were around when it happened. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. I tried to stop it, he whispered. I told the captain that Miller's story didn't make sense. The boy was handcuffed when Jake claimed he attacked him. But the captain told me to shut up. Who was the captain? She asked. Lewis looked at her with guilt. Captain Harris, Jake's uncle. Angela froze. The puzzle suddenly fit together. Family protection, vanished reports, sealed files. It wasn't just Jake hiding the truth. It was the whole chain of command. When Angela returned to her hotel, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. Stop asking about Marcus, or you'll end up like him. She stared at the screen. Her hands trembled for a second, not from fear but anger. She had expected this. The next morning, she entered the station as if nothing had happened. Jake greeted her with his usual smirk. Sleep well, ma'am? He asked. Angela smiled back. Perfectly. She walked to her desk, turned on her computer, and began copying files from the station's main server. Every document, every report linked to Harris and Miller this time. She wasn't just collecting evidence. She was preparing for war. Outside, rain started pouring. Thunder cracked again, echoing through the streets. Inside, Angela's face was lit by the glow of her computer screen. On it, the truth was finally coming together. Names. Dates? Signatures? She whispered. You can't hide behind that badge anymore. But what Angela didn't know was that Jake had been watching her too. And tonight, he was planning to make his move. The rain had stopped by morning, but the sky was still dark, heavy with clouds. The streets shimmered with puddles as Angela pulled up to the station. Her eyes were tired, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She had everything backed up, every file, every photo, every record that tied Officer Jake Miller and Captain Harris to the corruption that poisoned the department. But as she stepped inside, She noticed something strange. Everyone looked tense. Conversations paused mid-sentence. It felt like walking into a room full of secrets. Jake sat at his desk, pretending to write reports. But his eyes followed her like a shadow. Angela walked straight to her office, trying to act natural. She turned on her computer and froze. The files were gone. Every single one. Her folders were empty. The drive unreadable. Panic hit her chest for a moment, then she took a deep breath. They knew, she whispered. Someone had broken into her system. Angela called the IT department. A young technician came and checked her computer. "Looks like someone accessed your account at 2:43 a.m., he said. "From inside the building? Do you know who?" she asked. He hesitated. "The access code used belongs to you." Angela frowned. "That's impossible." The technician shrugged helplessly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. But it shows your ID." As he left, she realized what Jake had done. He had hacked her system and used her credentials to make it look like she deleted her own evidence. A clever move and a dangerous one. Now, if she accused him without proof, she would look guilty. Later that day, Chief Harris returned from a conference. He called Angela into his office. His expression was polite but cold. "Angela," he said smoothly, "I've received reports that you've been accessing restricted files and sharing confidential information without approval." Angela's stomach dropped. It was worse than she thought. "With respect, Chief," she replied carefully, "I was investigating misconduct, without clearance." He asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's not how we do things here." Jake stood in the corner, leaning against the wall with a smug smile. Harris continued, "Till we sort this out, you're suspended. Hand over your badge and weapon." Angela's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She placed her badge on the desk, her eyes never leaving Jake's. "You can take my badge," she said softly, "but you can't erase the truth." Jake chuckled. "We'll see about that." That evening, Angela sat alone in her car outside the station. The rain had started again, tapping softly on the windshield. For the first time, she felt the weight of defeat. But only for a moment. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small backup drive, the one she had hidden days ago. "You didn't find everything, Jake," she whispered. She drove to an old friend's house, Detective Carla Green, someone she trusted from her early years in the force. Carla worked in another district now, far from Harris's influence. When Angela explained everything, Carla shook her head. "This is serious. You're up against people who can destroy your career or worse." "I don't care about my career," Angela said firmly. "I care about justice." Carla nodded slowly. "Then we'll do this smart. We'll rebuild your case off the grid." For the next few days, Angela and Carla worked in secret. They cross-checked files, pulled old body cam footage, and traced phone records. One night, Carla found something shocking. "Look at this," she said. "There's an unreported call between Jake Miller and Marcus Brown just 2 hours before the boy was arrested." Angela leaned closer. "That means Jake planned it." "And look at the number he called right after the arrest," Carla added. "Captain Harris." Angela's eyes widened. They covered it up together. She smiled faintly. "Now we have them." But while Angela was preparing her next move, Jake was preparing his. He had followed her the previous night and now knew where she was hiding as she and Jet. Carla reviewed the files late into the night. Headlights flashed outside the window. Carla looked up. "You expecting someone?" Angela shook her head. Outside, a dark figure stepped out of a black car. Jake Miller, wearing a raincoat, holding his phone. His eyes filled with rage. He wasn't going to wait for her to expose him. Tonight, he planned to end it. The rain poured harder, lightning flashing across the dark sky. Inside Carla's small house, the lights flickered. Papers covered the table, evidence, reports, and screenshots. Angela and Carla worked in silence, their faces tense and focused. Suddenly, the dog outside started barking. Carla looked up, frowning. "That's strange. He never barks at night." Angela stood slowly, moving toward the window. Through the curtain, she saw it. A black car parked across the street. engine still running. A man's shadow stood beside it, motionless in the rain. Her chest tightened. "He's here," she whispered. Carla moved closer. "Who?" "Jake Miller." They turned off the lights quickly. The house went dark, except for the flashes of lightning. Angela grabbed her phone, but the signal was gone. The storm had cut the network. Carla reached for her gun. "If he's here, we can handle him," she said. Angela shook her head. "No, he's not here to talk. He's desperate, and desperate men don't think." Outside, Jake slowly walked up the path, his shoes splashing through puddles. He carried a flashlight and something heavy in his coat, the cold shape of a gun. His jaw was tight, his mind burning with anger. He thought about everything he was about to lose: his badge, his power, his name. And in his mind, there was only one person to blame: Angela Roberts. Inside, Angela whispered, "We can't stay here. There's a back door." They moved quietly through the kitchen, trying not to make a sound. But the old wooden floor creaked beneath their feet. Jake stopped outside the front door. He heard it, the faint noise. "Got you," he muttered. He kicked the door open. The sound shattered the silence like thunder. "Angela," he shouted, "you want justice? Let's talk about it face to face." Carla aimed her gun toward the living room. "Drop your weapon, Miller," she ordered. Jake laughed darkly. "You really think this is about justice? She's been lying to you all. She's trying to destroy us." Angela stepped out slowly from the kitchen doorway, her hands raised slightly. "No, Jake. I'm trying to stop you from destroying more lives." He turned toward her, flashlight beam hitting her face. "You don't belong here. You don't understand this world." Angela's eyes were steady. "I understand enough to know you killed Marcus Brown, and you covered it up with your uncle's help." Jake's face twitched. "That boy attacked me." Carla interrupted. "The evidence says otherwise." Jake raised his gun. "Evidence can lie." Angela took a small step forward. "But the truth can't, and I have it. All of it." The room went silent, except for the rain. Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. Then, from outside, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Sirens blared. Jake froze. "What the?" Carla smiled slightly. I called them earlier when I saw your car." Jake panicked. He grabbed Angela by the arm, pulling her close, pressing the gun to her shoulder. "You think you can ruin me?" he shouted. Angela didn't flinch. "It's not me ruining you, Jake. It's your own hate." The front door burst open. Officers stormed in, shouting commands. Jake hesitated, 1 second too long. Carla fired a warning shot, hitting the wall behind him. Jake stumbled backward, slipping on the wet floor. His gun fell, sliding across the tiles. 2 officers tackled him to the ground. He fought, yelling, "You don't know what she's done. She's a liar." Angela stood quietly, rainwater dripping from her coat, watching him struggle. Moments later, Jake was handcuffed. His face twisted in anger and disbelief. As they let him out, he turned to Angela. "You think this is over?" "My uncle will bury you for this," Angela replied softly. "He'll get his turn." Outside, the storm finally began to calm. Carla placed a hand on Angela's shoulder. "You did it." Angela shook her head. "Not yet. We still need to make the truth public." Carla nodded. "Then let's finish what we started." Angela looked out at the flashing police lights, her reflection in the window glowing faintly. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "Tomorrow, everyone will know who Jake Miller really is." But deep inside, she knew the real fight wasn't over. Captain Harris was still out there, and he wouldn't go down without a war. The sun rose slowly over the town, painting the sky in pale gold. For the first time in days, the rain had stopped. The streets looked clean, almost peaceful, but inside the police department, storm was still brewing. Angela Roberts walked through the main doors with quiet confidence. Her suspension had been lifted after the Internal Affairs Office confirmed her identity theft report. Jake Miller's arrest had made headlines overnight. The media called it the officer who thought he could hide behind his badge. But Angela knew this wasn't the end. Jake was just one part of a bigger chain, and at the top of it sat Captain Harris. She had come to finish what she started, as Angela entered.
Ow.
Everyone turned to look. Some nodded with respect. Others looked away in shame. Word had spread about how she had faced Jake and survived. Chief Harris was in his office, pretending to be busy on the phone. His voice was calm, but his eyes flicked toward the window when he saw Angela walking toward him. "Chief," she said evenly, standing in the doorway. "Agent Roberts," he replied with a fake smile. "Glad to see you're back. Quite the mess you've made." Angela placed a brown folder on his desk. "I'd call it cleaning up, sir." Harris opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, bank transfers, and call records connecting him to Jake's cover-ups. His face turned pale. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. Angela's tone stayed calm. "From your own system. You should have deleted your trail." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Then Harris leaned back, his smile returning, but colder. "You think this changes anything?" he said. "You'll lose your job for this. I still have friends higher up, people who don't like troublemakers." Angela met his eyes. "And I have something they can't ignore, the truth." He laughed softly. "Truth doesn't matter in this world, Roberts. Power does." Angela reached into her pocket and pulled out a small voice recorder. She pressed play. Harris's own voice filled the room, a recording of him from months ago. Talking with Jake about making the Marcus Brown file disappear. The color drained from his face. "Every word you said," Angela continued, "is backed up and sent to the state office. They're expecting me in an hour." Harris stood up suddenly, his chair scraping the floor. "You think you can destroy me?" Angela stepped closer. "You destroyed yourself the moment you thought justice was your toy." As she turned to leave, Harris shouted, "You'll regret this." Angela stopped at the door. "No," she said softly. "You will." When she walked out, several officers stood in the hallway, listening. None of them moved to stop her. Moments later, 2 state agents entered the building. They headed straight for Harris's office. His voice could be heard yelling, then pleading, then fading as they led him away in handcuffs. For the first time, the station felt clean. That afternoon, Angela and Carla stood outside, watching the reporters swarm the building. Cameras flashed, questions flew. "Agent Roberts, is it true you exposed the captain himself?" Angela gave a small, humble smile. "It's true that no one is above the law, not even those who wear a badge." Carla nudged her. "That's going to be on every headline tonight." Angela looked thoughtful. "Good. Maybe it'll remind people what justice really means." They watched as the police car carrying Captain Harris disappeared into the distance. Carla turned to her. "So what now?" Angela smiled faintly. "Now, I go back to work. There are more like him out there." Later that night, Angela sat alone in her office. The sky outside was quiet, stars just beginning to appear. She opened a small folder, labeled Marcus Brown. Inside was a photo of a young boy smiling, full of life. "Full of dreams," Angela whispered softly. "You got your justice." "Marcus." She closed the file and leaned back in her chair. The reflection in the window showed her tired but peaceful face. The face of a woman who had fought and won. The world outside was still far from perfect. But one woman's courage had reminded everyone that truth can outshine even the darkest badge. And somewhere, in the silence of that night, it felt like Marcus's spirit finally rested.